Today we'll be talking about insulin resistance and leptin resistance and how they relate to chronic disease and also weight loss, and how to get the body to burn fat versus sugar, and also how insulin and leptin relate to chronic disease of aging. So first I'd like to talk about carbohydrates. Simple and complex. Simple is like white table sugar that's found in candy and cake and soda, those kinds of things. Complex carbohydrates are known as potatoes, pasta, breads, cereals, and grains. So a simple carbohydrate, and I like to use the example of sucrose, which is white table sugar. White table sugar is actually made of sugar molecules, which are the green circles, hooked together with bonds. So they're sugar molecules holding hands in one straight chain. And sucrose is actually made of glucose molecules, which is found in your blood sugar. So if you were to measure your blood sugar, that's glucose. And fructose molecules. Fructose is found in fruit. So sucrose, which is white table sugar, is made up of glucose and fructose molecules in one straight chain. That's why it's called simple, because it's one straight chain. Complex carbohydrates, and I like to use the example of a potato. A potato is also sugar molecules here, hooked together with bonds, but they're arranged in a branch chain. So a potato without the skin, for example, is made up of glucose molecules only, pure glucose, pure sugar. And so the reason it's called complex is that it's in a complex arrangement. And some complex carbohydrates have some fiber molecules attached. But really, the only difference between simple and complex carbohydrates is the structure of the molecule. The base units are the same. So when I talk to patients about sugar, I mean simple and complex. There is a differentiation only within the structure of the molecule. So when we put these in our mouth, whether it's sucrose, white table sugar, or potatoes, we have enzymes in our mouth that immediately start to break off these bonds. And then we swallow and we finish digesting, which means breaking off all these bonds, breaking down the molecule into these free-floating sugar molecules. So all the bonds have come off. Over here, this simple carbohydrate, white table sugar, is broken down into glucose and fructose. This is in the gut. And then this potato has broken down into sugar molecules, glucose, pure glucose, and maybe a fiber molecule attached if it had some potato skin on it. So in the gut, it basically looks the same here. Sugar molecules here in the gut. So now the sugar molecules are small enough, because all along the gut wall we have tiny little pores, and now the sugar molecules are small enough, they're broken down small enough to pass through the pores of the wall of the digestive tract and go into the bloodstream. So the sugar molecules are now passing through the gut into the bloodstream, and we have a rise in blood sugar, and we all know what that feels like. When we eat some sugar, we have an immediate rise in blood sugar. And so from white table sugar, let's say cake or candy, we have an immediate rise in blood sugar. And actually from a potato, which is also pure glucose, pure sugar, we have an immediate rise in blood sugar. And in fact, from eating a potato, we can have a higher and faster rise of our blood sugar than white table sugar, because a potato is higher on what's called the glycemic index. The glycemic index has a list of all carbohydrates and a number next to the particular carbohydrate, which indicates how high and fast the blood sugar goes after eating it. So a potato can raise our blood sugar higher and faster than white table sugar. That's amazing. So whether it's a potato or pasta or breads or cereals, all of the base units are made of sugar. There may be some fiber molecules attached here, but it all gets digested down to sugar molecules and gets absorbed into the bloodstream and raises the blood sugar. Fiber molecules can slow down the absorption rate down into the bloodstream so that the blood sugar goes up slower, but it all ends up in the bloodstream and raises the blood sugar. When our blood sugar goes up, then it triggers the pancreas to pump out insulin. So insulin is a hormone, and it gets secreted into the bloodstream. This is insulin. So it comes out. When insulin comes out, it says, okay, sugar, where do you want to go? And let's say I ate some sugar, and maybe I had a meal of potato and some other carbohydrates for dinner, and then I was tired, so I went to bed right after that. So blood sugar will go up, and we're probably not going to be using that sugar for energy. So when sugar goes up, we have a couple options. We can either use it for energy, or if we're not going to use it for energy, we're going to store it for later. And so if I'm going to bed right away, I'm probably not going to use that much of that for energy. So insulin is going to take the sugar out of the blood and transport it into and convert it into a fat cell. So we're going to take the sugar out of the blood and store it as fat for later, which comes in handy if you think about when we used to live on the land. We'd come across food. If we were hunting and gathering, we'd come across food, maybe hunting for game, and eat as much as we could. And we probably wouldn't use all that energy at that moment, and we store the extra for later, because maybe later we weren't able to find any food. So we would dip into the fat cell and use that for energy for later. So in another scenario, let's say I ate sugar and I went for a walk or a jog right when blood sugar was going high. It has to be good timing. So when the sugar is in the bloodstream, I went for a jog or a walk, and insulin will take the sugar out of the blood and transport it into a muscle cell, and we'd use that for energy. So in either case, if I use the sugar for energy, or if I store the sugar as fat for later, blood sugar starts to drop, and then insulin starts to come down too. But insulin has a longer half-life. So sugar can start to come down immediately after I've put it over there or put it into the muscle cell. So it can start to drop, but insulin drops slower. So blood sugar, if it starts to drop, the body starts to realize it needs some fuel. So we can either dip into our own fat storage and use that for fuel. We can eat, we can have a meal, but we get signals that we need some fuel. And so if a meal is not around when the blood sugar is down, we would want to dip into our own fat storage and use that for fuel. However, if insulin is still present in the blood, insulin is a storage hormone. It stores sugar as fat. Stores sugar as fat. So when insulin is present in the blood, the body cannot do the opposite reaction, which is take fat out of the cell to burn it. We cannot burn fat when insulin is present. So if we're eating a meal that contains carbohydrates, more than we can burn at that particular moment for energy, and it doesn't take much. I'm not even talking about calories. I'm talking about carbohydrates. And just a little bit of carbohydrates will trigger the blood sugar and insulin to come out. So let's say I have cereal and milk and toast and orange juice. All of that is carbohydrates. So all that's going to raise my blood sugar, raise insulin. Eventually blood sugar starts to come down, but insulin is going to stay there. As I mentioned, it has a longer half-life. So when blood sugar starts to come down, I need some fuel. If I don't have any food available, I'm going to want to burn my fat, take fat out of the cell to burn it. But when insulin's there, we cannot burn fat.